Today, Don Smith has admitted that the statements he made against me were untrue. This is Don Smith's statement that was introduced as a court exhibit today. In March 2013, I issued 2 press releases which stated that Alexandru Hsu resided at your home, that you had interfered with the investigation into the claim that Hsu raped a young woman, and that further suggested that you valued loyalty to Mr. Hsu over law enforcement objectives and should be investigated for knowingly harboring an illegal alien. These press releases, which I approved, received considerable attention and caused you embarrassment. Today, I retract these releases unequivocally and apologize for the statements contained therein. These statements were untrue, and I should not have made them. Mr. Hsu did not then reside at your home. He was arrested at another location where he then lived. I know that you did not interfere with the investigation of Mr. Hsu, nor is there any evidence that you had any knowledge of Mr. Hsu's immigration status or were intentionally harboring an illegal alien. And finally, throughout your career, you prosecuted all manner of cases, and I apologize for conveying anything to the contrary. I recognize that my statements spawned substantial litigation. As you know, before making this apology and retraction, I dismissed with prejudice the case I initiated against you and trust we can put this chapter behind us. By Don Smith's statements today and his acknowledgement that the allegations that he made against me were untrue, then so too, those same allegations that he made to the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Department of Homeland Security, and the New York State Attorney General's Office, in an effort to further his personal and political agendas, were likewise untrue. Despite Don Smith's sworn statements to the contrary, there should be no doubt in anyone's mind that his actions resulted in the arrest and incarceration of an innocent man who has so far succeeded on his path to a $45 million lawsuit against Putnam County. As Putnam County DA, I had the honor of serving this community with a staff of the most courageous, committed, and ethical prosecutors and investigators who were dedicated to protecting the integrity of the criminal justice system from people like Mr. Smith. Assistant District Attorneys Heather Abisi, Danielle Pascal, Andres Gill, and investigators Henry Lopez and Lourdes Gonzalez stood with me shoulder to fight those who abused their power and violated their oaths to office. And today is a victory for all of us. Don Smith's untrue statements created a cascading and barrage of false and misleading media accounts that clearly affected the 2015 district attorney's race. We can never go back. We will never be able to go back and to change what Don Smith has done. But clearly, his actions had an impact on the voters of this county. And I can only hope that by his acknowledgement and admissions and confession today, that they will see clear on seeking their own justice in the future. That's my comment. Thank you.
I just wanted to add a few words. Many people are speaking today about restorative justice as a concept in the law. And restorative justice means, in a way, finding solutions to particularly public law issues, which involve the people who did wrong taking some form of responsibility themselves. And through that act of taking responsibility, there's a restorative element to those who are victims. I view the settlement as an instance of restorative justice. As Adam said, nothing can redo history. History proceeds in one direction. However, it's critical where there has been a miscarriage for those who engage in that miscarriage somehow to step up and acknowledge it. That has a tremendous systemic effect, I think. I think the implications, and I'm speaking for myself, not Adam, of what's gone on in the last several days are profound. Because where a sheriff engages in the behavior which has now been admitted to, which are making untrue statements, it has to call into question his capacity to serve. It has to call that into question. And I think that Mr. Smith should contemplate seriously, as he said in court today, I believe he's 68 or 69 years old, whether his behavior leaves him vulnerable, if you will, to what would be very justified attacks on his standing as sheriff, and whether someone who is engaged in this behavior can put himself forward with the requisite standing and status to serve in the position. So while this agreement doesn't require his resignation, and it does not, I think a fair implication of the agreement is that he engaged in behavior which the public has to view as potentially disqualifying. No one is perfect, and I think that errors in judgment, people in public life like people in private life engage in. The question here is whether a systematic effort to distort the truth and use one's office against a political enemy is something we really can tolerate and condone. And while I'm not from this county, I believe that the people in this county should very seriously look at that. And I think Don himself needs to seriously look at that issue. I want to just say one other thing, which is this. Permeating this case has been, and it's been in every newspaper article I've read, and there have been hundreds of them, that Adam is Judge Judy's son, that Adam has means. I think what's most important is neither of those facts. What's most important is that a person who could be sitting on the beach, literally, chose to engage himself in public service with a high degree of dedication and integrity. And that this has to be encouraged from all citizens who are capable of engaging in public service. And Adam Levy is a person with great capability. I don't believe district attorneys should be elected by parties. I don't think it's a partisan position. I don't think it has anything to do with parties. But regardless, he engaged himself, from what I've been able to see and review in the last 4.5 years, in tremendous efforts to deal honestly with the criminal justice system, which is very rare. And that he was essentially character assassinated, and that led to his political defeat, should be a concern to all people, not just people in this county. I don't want people who have means and who could otherwise, if you will, be sitting on the beach, regardless of whatever imperatives move them in their lives not to do so. I don't want those people to be disincentivized from serving because of their fear that their service will be met by jealousy, character assassination, and hatred. And I think that unfortunately those are the elements that existed here. So I want to thank Adam for his service, and also for the years he spent since, at great cost to his family, I know, and family life, persisting and trying to find out the truth. I spent 26 years doing the Yonkers case. When people ask me the legacy of the case, I say read the 740-page decision by the district court after listening to 200 witnesses and 7,200 exhibits, and read the Court of Appeals decision, because it's a truth-telling exercise. The law at its best, and public law particularly, is about truth-telling. It's not about how much money someone got. It's about us setting straight what has happened, so that our children and our co-citizens can understand why we're where we are. And Adam's played a tremendous service, I believe, in making people in this county aware, or potentially aware, of why we're where we are. And those motives are not always pretty. And what happens is frankly ugly, because as he says, an innocent man was caught up in something which, as the case will demonstrate, once we get to Hasu, and we're working on it, as you know, it's a tragic case, because that's a person without the means, if you will. And without Adam's support, he would probably be rotting somewhere in a state prison. So I thank Adam for his service. I thank him for his dedication. I recognize his wife sitting here, what she has had to put up with through this incredible homeless-obsessive situation. But it is warranted in the sense that without it, we're further from the truth. And with it, we're closer to the truth. And the truth can set us free. So we should feel a sense of liberation today at the statements Mr. Smith has been forced to make. I'm sure he didn't make them voluntarily, although he said he did. He made them because the alternative was to face a trial and to have put essentially before a jury a myriad of acts which are not explainable other than through revenge and disregard for the basics of the criminal justice system. So thank you for being here, and it's been a pleasure to be your attorney and work with you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody have any questions, please?
Mr. Sussman, does the county pay this $150,000?
The county pays $125,000 of it.
Right.
Mr. Smith personally pays to Mr. Levy $25,000 of it. As between the county and its carrier, my understanding, you'll have to clarify this with the county attorney, is that the county is paying. Now, I want to make a brief comment on that. The county is paying, though the county is not a party. The county was not named in this lawsuit. They were not sued, and Mr. Levy said from the first day we spoke about this that the lawsuit was against Mr. Smith in his personal capacity. I frankly don't know,
Right.
because I'm not part of their machinations and discussions, how it came to pass that the county agreed to make the payment, but they have, and they've done that as a matter of record. But I wanted to be clear that Mr. Smith's position was that Mr. Levy's position was that this amount of money ought to be paid, and the division of that payment was agreed upon betwixt them.
Okay.
Was there a court proceeding as part of the motions of it for the county to become a party to
No.
it?
No.
That never occurred.
We never brought the county into this case. The county is a defendant in the Hasu case, but that's a totally different matter
There was
for these
never any-
purposes. No, I just want that to be clear.
Yeah. Some of the legislators have been asking about that,
Well,
and they never got a clear answer on it.
Well, I'm telling you what's true. I
Yeah,
can't,
yeah.
I can't account for what anyone else is saying, or I don't know what they're saying, and I'm not gonna try to get into it.
Right,
I'm just
yeah.
telling you what I know to be the
But there was
fact.
no motion or
No
any
application.
No application for
The
them to be.
the issue that I think you're referring to is that Mr. Smith and his attorneys, as I understand it, take the position that any judgment against Mr. Smith is the responsibility of the county.
Okay.
And that they would seek the county contribution, it's called, toward payment of that judgment.
Right.
I think that what you're referring to is to resolve that, and to resolve the potential, A, that there'd be a larger judgment, and B, that they would be then held responsible for that larger judgment. they've agreed to this
Right.
division of payment and this taking of responsibility. But it's in that context. It's not because of what we have done.
If I can make it
Please.
Right, yeah.
crystal clear, from day one, this lawsuit was always against Don Smith in his personal capacity.
I have a letter signed. It's signed Don
Right,
Smith.
right, not sheriff, right, right.
Correct. I had the ability, when filing this lawsuit, to include the county if I chose. Nothing prohibited me or prevented me from doing that. I made it very clear to Mr. Sussman here that that was not my intent.
Right.
That I did not believe that Don Smith was acting in his professional capacity when he defamed me. He did it for his own personal and political purposes. And that clearly was beyond the scope of his official business.
Right.
The monies that I sought in order to settle this case, I expected to come from Mr. Smith. However, Mr. Smith made it clear that he was not prepared to pay the entire amount, and instead would go to the Putnam County taxpayers to pay the largest portion, despite the fact that it was based upon his misconduct. I was not going to interfere with Don Smith's demands of the taxpayers in that way. That is something he will have to take up with the taxpayers. But the taxpayers should know, and the voters should know, what the truth finally is. And I believe that by today's appearances in court, by his unequivocal retraction and apology, they do now know.
All right. Anybody else want to ask anything?
Yes, you said that the settlement is coming from the county and not the county's carrier. Do you know if Mr. Smith's defense was provided by the county or by the county's carrier?
Yes, I do know. The county's carrier paid for and provided the defense under what's called a reservation. The reservation means that they did not commit thereby to pay any judgment that came from the case, that derived from the case. What they did was pay for counsel, and they took the position that they would see what happened, and then there would be a determination of what would happen with any judgment. And that's not unusual. That's what happened here. Now, whether that should have happened or shouldn't have happened is somewhat beyond we don't control that. Sure, we know you have other things you need to do.
Do you have any thoughts about returning to public life?
I'm still considering that right now. If you ask my wife, I'm pretty sure the answer would be absolutely no. But I don't need your help to get me in any more trouble. I haven't given that any serious thought yet.
Okay.
But thank you.
So what comes next?
Just spending time with the family, enjoying the summer, and I look forward to putting this chapter in our lives behind us. Thank you.
All right, thank you all for being here. We appreciate your attention.